Okay, so I want to welcome everyone to xEssentials. I'm not sure which week it is. It's probably week 45-ish, around there or so. We've only got two more presentations to go after tonight. So there will be one on xScheduler, which Jeffrey Holmes, I'm trying to coordinate a date. He's had a bunch of work conflicts, so we're hoping for next week, but don't know that for sure. And then the last one will be the history of Christmas lights, which will be something fun for everybody to learn about the very first Christmas lights and the history of how we've evolved with this hobby and so forth. So tonight's presentation is KISS, Keep It Simple Stupid by Michael Downey. He had previously given this at the Utah Mini and got great reviews from it. So he graciously accepted my invitation to come and present. And so, Mike, you've got the floor.
All right. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Good. Glad to hear it. First off, I was asked to give this at a Utah Mini because of the fact that one of the things that I've discovered over the years is that in this type of hobby, or really any type of hobby, because we were talking about this earlier on the Zoom, it's really easy to get overwhelmed and really easy to get so overburdened that you start to think, holy mackerel, why am I doing this? And we had a lot of newer people, especially to RGB, to pixels at the Utah Mini. So I decided they gave me exactly 6 hours, and I decided to put it together, and I decided on this one right here. Why? First off, I would say that the first question really is, there we go, why simple? The reason for this is that the secret to not burning out, to no burning out, is not to overload yourself year after year. We look at other people's, the first time I saw RGB, to be honest with you, it was at a drive-through. And of course, immediately I wanted to do everything that individual had done plus more. And I quickly found out that as I started to go from just regular lore, right, AC, props and everything, to RGB, that I almost quit because I tried to do so much in 1 year that I had to really scale it back in order for me to be able to get on top of things and to understand things. And this is the reason why I tell people that are wanting to get into RGB, even if they've done the AC lights before, is that pick something 1 year, pick something that you want to do that first year, and get a controller, get the lights, build that prop, and then do that 1 year to where you feel comfortable. You understand about channels, you understand about universes, you understand about, because it's such a different thing. When I was doing lore, I was a musician for years and years, and I'm telling you right now that, I had very intricate patterns of on and off and fading in and out and whatnot going through it. And I was expecting the exact same thing with RGB. And now you can do it that way. But back then, when it was an older version of xLights, it wasn't so easy to do it that way. Back in the days of going into Audacity, doing your timing marks, bringing them in and whatnot. So I really do suggest to individuals, even if they're starting out for the first time, that you want to keep it fairly simple, and then keep it simple from year to year, because it will build up. It will get to the point to where you have this huge, wonderful display and everything makes absolute sense to you. Absolute sense. And that's really the important part, because it's not just the people out in front of your house that are enjoying this. It's also you. You're the one really enjoying this. You're the one that is doing it and going outside and loving the fact that people are looking at it and find joy and happiness in it. And the one thing you don't want to do is what I did. And that is have my wife almost tell me, no, you're not doing this anymore, because I got some Halloween singing faces. And I had a really rough time figuring out how to make those work in xLights. And I'm telling you, after a bunch of yelling, screaming, and cussing, my wife had it. And it's at that point that I realized, you know what? I need to relax because I know it's going to work. It's just going to take a few minutes to do so. So basically, this is a little bit of a picture of my display. Everything isn't on in this picture, but heck, it's close enough. And to tell you the truth, I was all AC lights. I was all just regular LEDs and incandescents. And the very first thing I started with was that big old tree sitting right there. I started with the tree first. I went in and did that after trying to do too much. And then I started to add things a little bit at a time afterwards. So let's talk about props. Especially for, the guys that have been doing this for a while. I know you're going to shake your head at some of the stuff I'm saying and whatnot, because everybody's different in the way that they do things. But it is really especially important to keep props simple. And the reason being is because I am a huge, huge believer in a lot of work one year and no work the next year. I want to do as very little as possible the second year that I have a prop. And the reason being is because if I have to rebuild that sucker every single time, then it becomes work to me and not become as fun. So let's take a look at windows first. I was looking for a way to do minimal damage to the house. My wife was really looking to me to do minimal damage to the house. But I wanted the lights to look exact. I didn't want the look of some lights going left, some going right, because I was using C9s at the time. I wanted it to look like somebody had really put some thought into this. So I'm sitting here trying to figure out on my house, how can I do this and keep it very, very simple to where the next year it was going to be very easy to do. And this is what I came up with. I created a window frame. Out of the first year I did it in 1x2s. That was not really all that intelligent. So this is what I've been using here now for a few years. It's a 2x2, painted black, and it has created the exact size of the outside of my window. I put in 3 very, very careful holes, 2 at the top, 1 at the bottom of below my windows and above my windows, and they're not even noticeable. And I have 5-inch screws that I keep on these frames all year long. And it takes me, listen to this, 20 minutes to put up all 4 windows. All I have to do is go in immediately. I'll go in. I have somebody below me. They lift up to where I can hold it in space. Zip, zip, in the top, done. Then I go down and do the bottom one. And I'm able to move through all 4 of those windows in 20 minutes. And my windows are completely and totally done. Completely and totally up and running. Notice, if you will, I don't know if you can see my mouse or not in this, but notice, if you will, that I have these little clips. I have these 1x2s going across and have these little clips sitting there. That is so I can put anything on that window I want to put and not have to do it permanently. Now, these clips are just like the little clips that you buy and you'd put a broom handle in or something of that nature that holds it up. And so I can now build a little PVC frame that fits inside those clips right there, and I can put anything on it, such as snowflake. I built these snowflakes. This was before Boscoyo became really popular and was doing all sorts of wonderful things. I went out, bought 10 mil coroplast, and I cut all 4 of them out simultaneously, drilled the holes in all 4 of them simultaneously. And now I have these big old 4-foot snowflakes. I did do them in 4 mil one year, and the winds here get up to 70 miles an hour gusting, and it destroyed them, completely destroyed them. Well, now on these windows, I have this frame of PVC, and I have it just drilled itty-bitty holes, and right at the top and on each arm, I have it zip tied. See, it's hard to see in the picture, and believe it or not, you don't really see it very well from about 10 feet away. So it's very hidden, but I've zip tied on to this frame. And now I have this prop, which I can at any moment put on that window just as simply as snapping it right into those holders. It's 1/2-inch PVC pipe painted black so it's not seen. And there you have it right there. Now I have that on. Now, when I do Halloween, I pop those off, and I haven't done anything Halloween yet as far as the windows go, but I do have the windows up. But I have when I do bats or spiders or whatever it's going to be, all I have to do is put it on the exact same size PVC frame. I can pop them right up, and then after Halloween, pop them straight off, pop the snowflakes on, and it's literally that simple. So when you're looking at props, when you're working with props, what you want to do is think about it this way. How much work do I have to do this year to make sure that I don't have any work to do next year? That's basically how I look at it. And so I'm willing 1 year to put in a huge amount of work and even make some mistakes in order that the next 3 or 4 years, I can change things around and do so with very little effort whatsoever. In fact, on these, I'm 12 volt, right? So on these, I can pop those in, and believe it or not, the Halloween stuff I'm working on has the exact amount of lights on there. So I don't even have to change my Falcon controller. It's just bam, it's just there. And basically what happens is that I can just plug these things in, and the Falcon already knows it because I've set it up before, and I have very little to redo every single year inside the controllers and inside my layout to make all of this happen. And I'm telling you right now, these snowflakes are a big hit. They're huge. They're sitting on the house and they dance and everything. The kids love them and whatnot. And I get the biggest kick out of everybody really liking them. But yet, I haven't worked on these snowflakes in 3 years. They just work. They pop on and they just work. Let me give you another example here, just real quick. Another example is like trees. Now, I'm going to show you a picture of a tree. Now, I'm kind of lucky because when they built my house, they made a very bad mistake. And because of that, I ended up with 14.5-foot ceilings in my garage. Notice two things. Number one, I just hang those frames up. Now, if I had a regular ceiling, that would be sitting on a wall somewhere. I just come in, put it on, bam, done. The next year, I just take them off, go outside, place them right in front of the windows on the ground. And like I said, within 20 minutes, they are up and running. And notice, if you could see the PVC, I forgot to paint it last year, which upset my wife very greatly. So this year I tore it apart and made sure it was painted so it wouldn't be so easily seen. But this right here is my mega tree. This mega tree is exactly 14 feet 3 inches tall. And I built it to where I have the semicircle. It's a 180, so I have the semicircle sitting around the bottom. It's changed a little bit since this picture. It's actually 4x4 all the way up to the top. There is no folding from winds with this tree because it is wood all the way up to the top. And if you can kind of see, it's hard to see, but if you can kind of see, you'll see that I have 2x2s in 3 different directions just holding it up. It works fantastic. The only thing I have to worry about is the wind blowing it over. And I do have 3 places where guy wires go in, and it holds it in place just absolutely beautiful. And another wonderful thing about the tree is, and you'll notice that I need to clean the leaves off of it, my controller, it is screwed into the base. So I have a couple of little locks sitting on the edges here, and then it is screwed into the base. So in other words, my controller is going nowhere. And it sits right there all year long. Now, I totally understand that if you don't have a place if your mega tree is 20 feet and you don't have a place to keep it that's 20 feet tall, please believe me, I totally understand that. But what I'm talking about, the basics here is being able to look at what you have, look at your storage places, look at what you want in your yard, and then work very hard to make sure that you don't have to go through a ton of work each and every year to make it work. Because our job here isn't to burn out, guys. Our job here is to make really neat things that people can look at and enjoy very much, such as my small trees. My small trees are built the exact same way. Now, once again, I'm going to change these next year because I have a little bit different idea on them, but I've used these exact same trees for 3 years. They have a handle on the back of them. I can carry 4 of them out at a time, place them down, put down some stakes down on the base to hold it down, and guess what? They're done. I know exactly where to plug them in on the controller, and it takes me minutes to put these out and have them in the proper place and plugged in. So basically what it comes down to, and what I've been talking about the entire thing here as far as props are concerned, when you're thinking about props, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're looking at it from the point of view is, if this is something I'm going to want to use more than 1 year, how can I build this smartly to where I don't have to work so hard at it every year that I'm sitting there in the middle of putting up my show thinking, why am I doing this? Right? And that's basically on the props what I mean by keeping it simple. Keep it to where you're enjoying it as much as putting it up as the individuals are that are watching it. Okay? Now, let's talk a few minutes about sequencing. Okay? It does not have to be as hard as it seems. In fact, we were just sitting here on the Zoom talking about sequencing and how to put timing marks down and all these other type things. But I'm going to tell you something that really, really upset me. What I did was about 3 years ago, I decided that I was going to do Halloween not because I wanted everybody to enjoy Halloween, but because I wanted to put out all my non-specific Christmas stuff and have it up and make sure that everything was working perfectly so I wasn't spending the month of November cussing. So at first, I really just put out the trees, I put out the windows, I put out, the timber work you see behind the Halloween faces there, just everything that wasn't totally Christmas specific. And I got them all working, and I thought, oh my goodness, this is heaven, because at Christmas time, I put out my arches, I put out my candy canes, put out the snowflakes, and that's really about it. And the stars on top of the trees and whatnot. And I went from Halloween to Christmas really, really quick. These singing faces were a massive hit. And all I did was, because once again, I just wanted to make sure everything was working, is I put a whole house, I had my whole house model there, and I put a single effect for each song on the entire house, and that's all that played on everything else while the song was playing. I went outside to talk to people, right? We all do, because sometimes we want the ego boost. Sometimes we want to find out if they're enjoying it. Sometimes we just love talking about the lights because, hey, people just think they're wonderful and we want to tell them all about how we did it. Everybody loved those singing faces. Everybody. Notice right next to the right of the singing faces, I had 3 of those wonderfully stupid spotlights that move things around, like the eyes or bats or something that everybody, kids about. I put 3 of them up and had everything on a whole house model and did it, and the singing faces. And let me tell you, everybody thought it was amazing, which really upset me, because I think it's amazing when I do detailed sequencing. At Christmas Expo this year, I went because I wanted to meet everybody face to face, had family in Texas, so I thought this is the perfect time to go. And I went, and I actually sat down with Sean, because at the xLights, one of the xLights classes, he said, here I have the window projector with Santa in it, right? Shooting from behind, and Santa's walking around. He says, I have a tree that I have the icicle lights in, that they're just, they're just flowing down and whatnot. And he says, everything else is RGB. Everything else is sequenced. He says, when I go out and talk to people, I will tell you what their favorite thing is in order. Number 1, Santa. Number 2, the light streaming down. And number 3, the rest of the lights. Don't get so caught up in the fact with sequencing that if you don't have every individual thing doing everything different and everything amazing, and you go out and you have amazed yourself, you sit in your car and you look at the song when you first do it and it's done. And I've done this, and I think, oh man, that is art, right? But the only person thinking that is you. Remember, in xLights and with RGBs, That we're not just turning on and turning off. We're actually, look at the trees there. Look at the house. They were doing a whole house effect there, and it was this wonderful whole house effect. You've got to remember that even with the whole house effect, all those lights are turning on and off and changing colors, something that you and I had to do hours and hours and hours of work. RGB makes it to where it's a little easier. Now, I would never do a Christmas song with just a whole house effect, but when I go out and talk to people, they absolutely love the singing faces. In fact, one of the newspaper here came out and talked about how incredible those singing faces were. And it was so cool because those faces were singing and really didn't mention anything else about the other lights. So when you're doing your sequencing, look at the thing, either the megatree or the matrix or whatever it is that's going to be your main focus. When you do that, what's going to end up happening is that the rest of the lights don't have to be so wonderfully exact. Because first off, do you want to take away from the thing that you've worked so hard on to make it really cool? See what I'm saying? So if you have this wonderful thing going on, let's say you purchased from Clyde or Ron a megatree thing, or you from somebody else, you did a megatree thing, and that's really what everybody's going to be staring at. Why in the world would you spend hours upon hours upon hours of making sure that everything else is completely detailed, when in reality, what you're wanting everybody to really look at is that wonderful job you did on that prop? So remember, look at it as a person who has no idea what you're doing. Look at it as a person that is just looking at the show, and sit there and think, what am I staring at more? And then you'll start to realize that maybe sequencing doesn't have to be 12 to 20 hours per song. That you'll be able to have fun with it, spend more time on the things that you really, really want to be able to spend time on and make amazing, and a little less time on the rest of it, because of the fact that you're really not, that's not where the focus or emphasis is going to be during that song that's going to play. Okay, that's just kind of throwing it out there for you, to just something to think about. Because I remember when Sean said that, I thought, oh my gosh, that exact thing has happened to me. And it led me to realize that all I've got to do is use some good effects on the props around the thing that I want to be emphasis, and it will move, it'll keep the flow going, everything will happening, with at the same time keeping the focus on the actual thing I want the focus on. Now I changed this. I would put these, this is how cheap I am, guys, with time. Okay, and I am very frugal with my time. I have these singing faces sitting right here. Absolutely love them. Bought them from Boscoyo, did them up, finally got them working, and absolutely love them. I think they're just so much fun. However, I had to take them down after Halloween and put up my matrix. So I created a matrix. I spent a lot of time on it. Once again, 2x2 frame, had that thing over-engineered like there's no tomorrow. And I had 3,000 lights in it. And let me tell you, I didn't buy anything from Boscoyo. I had a black piece of 4x8 coroplast sitting in my garage. I measured it. I drilled it. I put every light into it, put it on the frame. Oh, everything was absolutely perfect. And I was happy with it because of the fact that I could see all my really cool stuff, you know, like when I had little guys up there dancing or something of that nature. I loved it. Then I took a look at P10. When I looked at a P10 panel and realized that I would have to do a quarter of the work, that I would have 25,000 lights in the same area instead of 3,000 lights. And then I could put singing faces on it, and I could have more fun singing faces for both Halloween and Christmas sitting on it. It was a no-brainer. So this year created a 4x8, a 7x7 P10 panel, right? Did all the stuff, you know, 2x6s and everything. It's a monster. But guess what I get to do? I put it up the same place that those Halloween singing faces are. I put it up before the 1st of October, and I don't touch it until January 2nd. I love it because once it's up there, it's up there. And now I can take Singing Faces and put it on, and it doesn't matter what holiday is. It's after. In fact, I'm even thinking about leaving it up till February. Who cares if I get divorced? But I will tell you this. I could have a heart singing face up there. It's just, the possibilities are endless. And to tell you the truth, when I had dancing characters last year on there, I loved it. Thought, wow, from the road, you could really tell what it was. I can stand 5 feet away from it and tell what it really is now. So I improved it. And here's the worst part of the entire thing. I sold all the lights, and not for a high price. I sold that matrix with the controller, and I built the P10 matrix for $100 less than what I built that other matrix for. Buying the lights, buying the controller, the whole bit. I just could not believe that it was cheaper to do P10 than it was to actually do all those nodes. And it just kills me, just absolutely kills me, because of the fact that I spent all the time building that the last year. One other thing I wanted you to see on this picture before we move on, you see that little down the left-hand corner, right there is a boulder. I have 3 boulders, smaller boulders, sitting in my yard on the left-hand side. I wanted to create a net to go over it. And man, I looked, and everybody has these. Over in China, they've got nets, and they were like $100 and some odd and all this stuff. And I almost bought 3 of them. When I went out, I realized I had nets with LEDs on them. So what did I do? I just went out, brought in my nodes, and I zip tied a node to each one of those LEDs. Cost me $24. And now I have nets that are RGB, and I've used them now once again for 3 or 4 years without ever having to sit there and worry about having them done. So this is the whole thing. And oh, by the way, they actually really loved those spotlights behind everything too. They love the light. They love the eyes going around, the witches. And that was so simple because I had over here on this side of the house, on the right-hand side of the house, behind the mega tree, I had 6 LoRa controllers, and inside my garage, I had 6 LoRa controllers. Now there is a Falcon sitting inside of there, and a short network cable running to my first LoRa controller, which now there's only 2 in there, and then there's a network cable that runs through the basement and out to the side, and now I only have 2 out there. But all I do is I turn those bad boys on, and once again, movement's going on. There's so much eye candy going on with very, very little work. Okay, and now I'm sitting here smiling because I just know some of you are biting at the bit to yell at me, but that's okay. That's okay because we'll have questions at the end. The last thing, keeping it simple, is mapping. Think about your mapping. When you are setting up where a controller is going to go, when you're setting up what props you're thinking about doing either this year or the next year, and every one of you are guilty because right now you're not only building props for this year, you're also planning for next year. Think ahead. That is the most perfect thing that you can do because there is nothing worse than setting everything up and then having to change all your mapping, all your layouts, all your controllers because, oops, I want to do this. And now I've got to change this controller over here and this thing over here and that over there. And now you're going back and redoing everything you've done before. For you guys who are new at this, you want to keep this as simple as possible. Now, I will tell you, it is kind of cool that now being able to have communication between the Falcon and xLights makes it in the layout and in the controller itself a little easier. In fact, I'm very excited. I watched the video last week or the week before on the new protocol that they're doing to where it ignores any channels that are actually not being used inside of xLights. So you can have a billion channels worth of controllers, but xLights will go back and tell it, oh, this is the only thing being used here, 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 and here. That's really, really cool stuff. Now, I got to admit, it hurts my pride a little bit because I'm an expert on setting those bad boys up and having my channels perfect in the Falcon and having my channels perfect in layout and making it work. I'm very proud of the fact that I can do that and walk outside and see that actual prop lit up from first light to last light and go, oh yeah, I'm good, right? But in reality, what it comes down to is that you do want to be able to think ahead. If you keep everything simple, if you keep everything and think ahead about what you're going to do, you're going to be able to do more and more each year and still relax and be able to enjoy the very thing that we want to enjoy. Guys, if you're like me, I see my show very, very little. The joy for me is not in the lights dancing during the show. In fact, it's kind of a letdown, isn't it? Because after the show is started, you're thinking about next year and starting to build props for the very next year. And that's because our joy, most of it, is found in building the show and making it happen and seeing people react to it. But you don't want to make it to the point to where you get disappointed and get discouraged very easily. I was just listening to a gentleman on Zoom before we started this. And he was talking about, how to put down these timing things and how to this and how to that. And, it is very kind of overwhelming in the beginning. But as you learn to do it, if you learn to not overdo and not sit there and try to overdo everything each and every year, you're going to learn that this is going to be one of the funnest hobbies that you're ever going to be in. Except for when you have a 25-foot tree and two RGBs go out at the top of it. That sucks no matter who you are. But I will tell you, though, by trying to keep it simple, it's going to keep you sane. And it's going to let you have fun for years and years to come. Years and years to come. Guys, I've seen that this is not a budgeted hobby, and I'm going to disagree 1,000%. If that's possible. I have a budget of $1,500 a year. I look at what I would like to do. I realize that I am going to Home Depot 75 times to build a prop because I am never smart enough to know exactly what I need. Hey, it's half the fun. People at Home Depot know me by first name. But I will tell you this. I do budget it. I have a budget and I look at the lights that I need. I look at how to build the prop that I want to build. And I do, unless it's going to be a really large prop, I understand that that's going to take a little more, but I have a $1,500 a year budget. When I came out of Lore, that's exactly what I did. I spent $1,500 a year and I built it up as I went, and more AC stuff got replaced as more and more RGB stuff came out. But I will tell you, I do keep a lot of AC stuff still out there. I like the way they look. I love my angels. I love the way they look. I love the way they twinkle. I love some of the fun things that I have that will never be RGB. Okay? Partly because of the fact that I'm way too lazy to sit there and tear them apart and then load them up with RGB. I know it's possible. But I'm just saying to you, don't overload yourself. The minute you find yourself being really angry about something, you need to sit back, take a deep breath, and walk away from it and ask yourself, honestly, am I biting off a little too much here? And if you're being honest with yourself and say yes, then guess what? Back off a little bit. I got news for you. The world is not going to end if every single prop you decide to build does not get out there to wow the masses. So that is the presentation right there.
The xLights project exists because of people like you. Help continue the project by making a donation today at xlights.org/donate.